Teachers of Reddit. What clicked about a student after you met his/her parents? I've had multiple cases where the kid is bad and I think, how did this kid end up like this? And then I meet the parents, and then think, how did this kid not end up worse? 10th grade student who had zero self-esteem, passive body language, shy, hesitant, fearful, slouching. Over the first month of school, he opened up with us, as none of the other kids were DCKS and the environment was pretty fun. He was very smart, very funny, and witty to boot. He had self-confidence, he just kept it very well hidden. I didn't understand why he still maintained that shy, quiet, reticent presence when he was in the hallways and with other teachers. Why he still always looked like he wished he was invisible. Met his parents and understood everything about his home life immediately. His dad was a domineering bully. I could feel it in my bones the minute they walked in. The way he sat down, the way he talked to me, the way his wife acted, everything. He was like a ticking bomb. I'm not putting it into words well, but I could tell my student lived in two very different households. When dad wasn't home, his life was filled with fun and laughter. When he was full of fear. Kid could never focus on anything. His eyes were always traveling around the room and rarely on his work. Dad came in for a meeting and did much the same. I don't know if I've ever had a one-on-one conversation with someone where they were looking all over the place like he did. Nice family though. I taught a kid in Japan who was textbook ADHD. Taisei. He just made class impossible. Sweet kid, but a complete distraction who made no attempt to learn English. When I went to introduce myself to his mom when she dropped him off one day, she just ran away from me. Bolted to her bike and took off. Over there, mental disorders are still seen as kind of a source of shame, especially out in the country where I was. So the mom literally running away from the problem rather than acknowledging anything about me as a teacher was all I needed to know about Taisei's unchecked ADHD. I was in my first semester of student teaching and this student was crushing it, straight A's, class role model, and then his grades dropped off, and I reached out to the stepdad to discuss. Turns out the stepfather was doing all his work, virtually, and went on vacation. Next thing I see the next day is his son with a black eye. He told me it was from football, but then told 3 other teachers 3 other things. I became this student's tutor after school so he could be in a safe place if only for a moment. I had a student accuse me of picking on her. If I called on her to read, everyone reads in my room unless they come to me at the beginning of class and ask me not to call on them because they're having an off day, then she'd text her mom that I only called on her. If I gave her a B and her friends an A, she'd text her mom and say I graded her paper unfairly. When I caught her cheating on a test and took her cheat sheet, I didn't fail her. I just took her means of cheating. This is more kind than any other teacher I know. She went to the principal and complained I was being unfair and didn't give her makeup work and therefore she had to use a cheat sheet. Then she texted her mom that I wouldn't let her finish her test, which wasn't true. Her mom turned out to be a teacher's aide at our elementary campus. We met for a parent/teacher conference when it got to the point that she was pulling her phone out every few minutes to text her mom one complaint or another. I was always on edge and wanted to discuss the behavior with her mom, especially considering students aren't allowed to have their phones out and she was the only student breaking the rules. During the meeting, she refused to even look at her daughter's work to see why her daughter received a B when her friends received an A. She refused to listen to my aide when he told her that her daughter was one of about 15 students called to read that day. And she literally closed her eyes and turned her head away when I tried to show her the emails between her daughter and me regarding her missing work before the upcoming test. She closed her eyes and said, "I'm not looking at anything you have to show me because my kid does not lie and I refuse to let you sit here and show me something telling me she does." Like mother, like daughter. The grandmother was in charge of the lunchroom too and mistreated her staff and was rude to students. The whole family was just awful, terrible narcissistic people. Many kids who are unable to focus and have challenging behaviors are just hungry. I work at a low socioeconomic school. Many kids arrive with no breakfast and no lunch. No such thing as cafeterias in this country. Pack lunches from home or buy some dim sims from the canteen. The school has a club 3 times a week where kids learn to cook basic breakfast meals and eat together. It's advertised as a cooking club but its purpose is really to ensure the poorest kids get a nutritious free meal. Getting food into them changes their behavior in a very perceptible way. Oh, I was the kid. My late primary school teacher was frustrated with me because I was bright but never did homework. Class participation great, but I shut down when someone was less than nice to me. She requested a meeting with my parents, lovely mom, abusive stepdad. The meeting was after school, and the next morning when I walked into class she pulled me aside and gave me a big hug. I remember her saying I'm so sorry. She couldn't fix the situation, but she made sure to encourage me and appreciate me while I was at school. I worked as a tutor with a kid who was bright and worked hard, but who always had her guard up. It was months into our work together before she finally cracked a smile. That was a big day. You could just sense this coolness and distance behind her eyes. I gave her space, and it was really one of the nicest compliments a student has paid me when she started to relax around me. I was glad she realized she could trust me. One day I was at her house when her mom and I think stepdad needed to talk to her about some really minor teen infraction, if I remember correctly, something that hadn't even happened yet, but some scheduling thing she hadn't realized would be a problem. They turned it into a 5-act full-stage production with me sitting right there, just relentlessly laying into her over and over despite her immediately saying she'd sort it. I felt for her, and yet, totally saw why she was the way she was. I think of her sometimes. I hope she got out into the world and found good people. She deserved it. I work with kids and we have a little girl in our group. She's very sweet but clearly struggles with communicating and understanding games that she should be able to at her age, 5. I see her father daily and he is clearly autistic. He has zero sense of social awareness, and launched into a 10-minute speech on his favorite movies the first time he saw me, when he was just supposed to be quickly picking his daughter up. He seems completely unaware of his own difficulties, and it's hard to see that he thinks his daughter is a typical child when it's clear that she needs extra support and resources and will undoubtedly struggle without them. I had a meeting with a student's mom. She sat down and immediately spouted, "What the FCK has that little shit been doing?" The meeting got worse from there. I kept a very careful eye on him and had regular chats with the counselor regarding him out of concern. I made sure to build up his confidence whenever possible. He was so smart, but his home life was absolutely toxic. I used to work at a school for violent and troubled kids. It was basically the last step before juvie. There was one kid who was an absolute bully and a shocking, and I mean shocking, misogynist. But only when he was around peers. We found that this same kid was incredible when working with the one lower functioning class we had. As long as none of his peers saw him, we had to suspend him one day for fighting with another kid, and I drove him home early. His dad was on the porch waiting, as the school had called. I've never seen a kid crawl into his shell faster than this kid when he saw his dad. This bully who was just an hour ago wailing on some other kid, just completely cowered when he saw his dad. He walked onto the porch and barely met his dad's eyes. His dad looked at him with a rage behind his eyes and said, "Get inside." I was pretty far away, but it really looked he was holding back tears. He disappeared inside and the dad told me, "Sorry for what he did. Don't worry. I'll take care of it." I said something about how we were still getting to the bottom of it and how he was a good kid, and the dad just scoffed and went inside. I got back to the school and spoke with one of the counselors. I was just out of high school and basically just a glorified security guard they called a teacher's aide, and said I was uncomfortable with what I saw. The counselor was like, "Yeah, we're pretty sure there's abuse in that household, but we can't prove it." I still think about that kid. Heart of gold when no one was watching, and incredibly smart too. Kid was obnoxious, rude, did not start on assignments, and distracted others. We have behavior tracking software that proves this. All of the teachers in the grade met with the mother and we said the same thing. We presented her work and the behavior data. The mom was convinced we were all picking on her daughter, and she passed this narrative on to her daughter, and that's exactly why she behaves the way she does. I was working with kindergarteners and one student had a very bad habit of cussing. I asked his father to talk to him about. His father looked at the kid and said, "You know we don't do that shit. What the FCK is wrong with you?" Then he turned to me and said, "I don't know where he gets it from." Had a kid who would go from calm to angry like a switch has been flicked. This happens especially when he loses in a game, so the complaint about him usually comes from their PE teacher, but from other teachers too when we play classroom games. One time, after several complaints about outbursts, some caught on camera because our classrooms have CCTV in case any complaints arise from either students or teachers, his parents were called in. Lo and behold, his dad started cursing us out and accusing us of singling out his son and provoking him. The mom was not as aggressive, but took the dad's side as well. Not the teacher, though I have been a teacher, but the parent. This is a bit awkward, but here it goes. My daughter, then aged 7, started in a new school. Her old school was not good, and because the average kid had so many problems there, she never stood out in the group. At first we were writing back and forth with the teacher, thinking she had a hard time adjusting to a new town and school. Then it got worse, like she wouldn't enter music classes despite singing on the choir and playing the piano and tuba. Then she would just randomly get up and leave the classroom in other classes, and she would often just do her own thing. Teacher asked them to draw a tree and she got 19 trees with green tops and brown trunks, and one with a pink trunk, purple crown and little blue heart fruits. Teacher would tell them to write their name, 19 pencil written first names and one blue, green and orange full name. Teacher would tell them to clean up around their desks. 19 would remove paper clippings and sit back down. One would be missing from the room, but found getting a broom and filling a bucket with water to clean. I think you get the picture now in more ways than one. We were called in for a meeting, because they thought she might have autism. I think I was there for about 10 to 15 minutes, before they asked if I had ever been diagnosed. It's 3 years later now, and yes, we have autism.